All right. So I feel like this recording is going to be a train wreck of sorts, and I keep seeming to be putting it off. So I'm going to just go for it and try to do a rough cut, and maybe I change it in editing, maybe I don't, maybe I post it. Um, the goal here is to make this kind of code ring or a coder ring. Um, you can put any text on there you want. I think if you keep it down to about four characters, it'll probably work out best. I have a couple samples here, which I'll add for the thumbnail. And they don't really, the version I have right here is like pinky ring size for me, but it has a really nice embossed one. I 3D printed it using an old MakerBot replicator and MakerBot 2 replicator. And it turned out really well with no supports. Very kind of quick print, and it's oddly very satisfying and fun to do. So without any further ado, and without any more pomp, let's ready, set, go. So this site that I'm using right here is this one called BlocksCAD 3D, and it's really block SCAD. SCAD is like an underlying program. There's one called Open SCAD that is really kind of interesting. I can code that same one in this, but in this case, this web interface is really nice. It works on Chromebooks. It is a fun project to do, and it's block-based. So it's using that kind of block-based kind of drag and drop fun stuff. So let's start creating something. When you open it up, it looks pretty similar. Oop, let me start a new one. Nothing to see here, as you can see. But let's start this off, and we'll make a code ring. So it's always good to give it a decent name for these and as you go forward. And what you'll see in our interface right here is on our left side, it gives us all of our ability to kind of click and open up. There's 3D shapes that are in there. There are 2D shapes, which then can be extruded up. There are transformations, and so this will let you translate it or move it around in the 3D space. It'll let you mirror things, scale things, color. You can kind of click through the whole thing. We'll spend a lot of time on this video in the, not a lot of time, but we'll spend some time using union and differences so that we can cut out the middle of a cylinder and use that kind of Boolean logic to work it out. We're going to use a little bit of, not really math, but we're going to use those as storing our variables. And essentially that's going to be it, other than using a couple variables for it. When I drag in a shape, and here I'm going to drag in just a simple cylinder, I can then over here where I am kind of, let me remove me from the scene here for a moment. You can see that here now we have an option to render it. And when you click the render button down here in the corner, you should get whatever that shape is that you're looking to pull up. So here, if I do a quick render, there's my cylinder. I have a couple different options here on how much, if I go to low resolution, it'll look much more blocky, and if you click or right click, you'll get different options. Also, if you have a 3-button mouse, it's worth mentioning that your 3-button mouse will give you a little bit of extra functionality. So I usually do all of my modeling in medium unless I'm doing something really complex, and then I might do it on the low. When I finish my project and I'm actually done with it, then I definitely do a high resolution one and export the STL so that I can do my 3D printing from that. So let's get going with the coding here. I think I'm going to leave myself out of the picture most of the time. I have my nice Coding is Magical shirt on, which I was going to share, but instead of that, let me get out of the way so you can actually see what I'm modeling here, and I'll try to view in and out, and maybe I'll come back just to explain a few things. So let's snap me out of there and take a quick look here. So I'm going to zoom in on this model so we can see it a little bit better. Here is our beginning point. And I'm going to, at this point, actually center this cylinder up. So I'm going to go ahead and center it. And you'll notice when you do that, it actually kind of sinks it below the plane, the original plane. So everything is centered at this point. Next, what I want to do is I want to kind of understand how I'm going to subtract this out. And I just want to show you very quickly how that works. So if I were to subtract one thing from the other, I'm going to use an operation for this. And I'm going to start off with a pretty simple one where I'm just going going to do the difference. And I'm right clicking on my cylinder, or you can drag out another one. Either way works perfectly fine. If I drag out a cylinder and I put a second cylinder there, now I've got one subtracting from the other. As long as my minus one, my center one, is a little bit less, when I go ahead and click render now, I'm essentially giving myself the makings of a ring. Now, if I duplicated it, if I just right-clicked on this item and duplicated it, I would have it also centered. That's what's missing here. That's why it looks like it's just a place to maybe put a coin or something. But I want to make sure they're centered, and this is essentially how we will make our ring show up. So let me do one more here. And there you can see it. Let me drag it in so it runs the difference command. Puzzle, oh, centered, 10, radius. Let me get that one out of the way. That was the problem. There we go. So now I've got a basic ring to start off with. Excuse me. Now, there's going to be a number of things we're going to kind of do here to make this and build this up so we can put the text on there. And it does get a little bit tricky as we move things around and move on from there. So don't get too frustrated here. There's a lot of little steps that we're going to do, but I'll walk you through it, and I'll share a picture of the source code at the end that you can go and follow if you want to build it up and make your own code ring or any other kind of ring with those few different letters on it. Now, we're not actually going to go too in depth here to spin it around the ring, but we're going to make it so that all the letters are actually straight on, and then I'm going to cut off the outside of it. And so it's just a matter of putting everything in the right order. It's not terribly difficult. So let me get out of the way one more time. And what I want to do next here is I want to build up my text, and I think I'm going to add a variable here so that I can pick and create some rings with a different size. So I'm going to rename this variable from the get-go so it makes more sense. Let's call this the inside ring diameter. There we go. And we want to set this to some sort of value at the very beginning. So I'm going to grab one from the math, and I'm going to just set that to be, I don't know, for the first one here, I'll make it be 12. It'll be a little bit bigger so I can maybe wear it. So that's in millimeters. Any of your measurements you see in here are all in millimeters. I'm going to use this number now. If I go down to my variables again, I can drag this in, and I can put this number in. And I can drag it out again and put it in. So now my number, if I were just to run it the way it is and do a quick run, you'll see that it's definitely a little thicker. And I think because the rings that I was playing with before weren't quite that tall, so I'm going to make them be just a height of 8. It actually doesn't matter what I make the inner one, the inner height that I'm subtracting, because all that's going to be completely taken out. So it could be really, really tall. It could be 100. It doesn't even matter. You just want to make sure that it goes all the way through your shape. So if you're subtracting that out and I click it and render again, there it is. Now, I'm going to make this be a little bit thinner, and I think for all of the rings I do, I'm going to make it be just a little bit bigger than whatever the other number is. So let me think what that's going to be my inside diameter. So if I wrote it like that, that really should be the one that is being cut out. And this one should be, let's use a little bit more math here. I'm going to use just, I'm just going to make it 1 millimeter thick, and I'm going to use this for my sizing. So let me duplicate that and put it in, and I'll put that in for both of these. So all I've done now is I'm using that variable all the way through so that I can get them to be a standard way that we create them. So here we go. We have now a ring that is just 1 millimeter thick and 8 millimeters high. So far, so good. Well, let's get to the text part. I'm going to move this up and we'll build it, because I think mentally you're going to think of doing it from here to begin with. What I want to be able to do here is I want to pull in some text for it. So the text I want to go right kind of through this section of it. And to do that, I really am just going to come over and look at my options. So let's see, do I have text in here? Do I have text in here? And as you follow down, you'll see, oh wait, there's text right here. Now, we could do it as the, if we look back here again, we could do something as with the 2D text and do an extraction from there or extrusion from there with it. I think we can get away with doing it just with this tool. We'll change a few of the lines on here, and let me get a little bit closer so you can see. Really, we need to be careful of, maybe a little too far. Let's make it be code, because that's what I was basing my last one on. And my height, because I just changed the size of my ring to be 8, I'm going to size it down to be 8. My thickness, oh, that's a good question. Let me think. I think I'll make the thickness be really big. I could very quickly just run this and see where it ends up. And you can see it's kind of cutting through there, not quite what I was looking for. So how can I adjust that? How can I put it in a better place for it? Oh, I see. I've got two code blocks here. Let's get rid of that one. That's why it made no sense. See, it is turning out to be a little bit of a train wreck. Render. Are you rendering? Perfect. That's gonna be the most uncomfortable ring ever. Oh, or crown if I have it on my head like this. Let me get my ugly mug out of the way again. So my new streaming recording setup here has like 2 monitors and different things, and it's great, but it also is really confusing. All right, so let's fix this really quick. Right here, let's go and do some rotations for this. So we're gonna do a couple transformations with it. First off, let me give it a slightly different color just for fun so we can see it a little bit better. And especially as I turn it and try to do something here with it, there's my code. Let me go and now use my transformation and pull in a rotate. And I'm also gonna need a translate here. Whoop. Come on. Oh, I should be got out a mouse special for this. So here, if I do my rotate, this tool, when you do a rotation, has some really nice options to it. And one of them is that as you click on these, it gives you an angle right from the get-go. So if I wanted to kind of change my rotation for this one, in this case, I'm just going to do my X. I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. And what I do for basically all these ones is I'll do a little bit of change, and then I hit it, and I render it, and try to see, okay, so that turned it that way. And I can work with that. I can use it right from there. And I think I want to center my text. Let me try centering the text, do a render. So I'm looking for baby steps. Oh yeah, that's going to work out really well. So if you get stuck in this kind of crazy loop, if you do a click down, I'm using my left mouse and I'm looping around it here. That's one way to do it. There's also a couple of tools down here where you can kind of set it up and get it back to your original kind of angle. It gives you options for the top and different views, but I find it fun to kind of just move myself around until I get it right. So let's do my thickness. Talking about thickness, let's make my thickness, I don't know, 50. And here you can see I'm shooting code way out into the world. Maybe it doesn't need to be 50, maybe just do 20. I mean, depends how crazy you want to get with your coding beast here, but now I could, if I wanted to, try to print it something like this, but instead of doing, actually maybe I don't need my translate for this one. Instead of doing the whole bit where I make this be embossed or raised from it, I could, for instance, take these two, the cylinder and this, and cut it out of the bigger cylinder. So what I'm suggesting is that I have 2 different pieces here. One would be let me color my inner one. Let's color this one, I don't know, orange or whatever color. And when I run this, you actually can't see the one in the middle yet. But what I was suggesting is we could do this in a way that I can put them together and then cut it out, and I could try to see if it could print it with all of that cut out. So let's try that just for fun, even though that's not where I was originally going with this. Let me do a set operation, and I'm going to use the union one. The union one creates an object out of two different objects. So if I have 2 or 3 or 4 different things, I can have them all act as one object by using the union command. So that adds them together. It's sort of like a Boolean kind of statement where I'm saying this and this and this are all part of that same object. The difference one is the opposite. It can subtract things, but it's often really useful to start off with 2 different things that are already unioned and then do differences between those two, and it is how you can do things with very simple shapes, make very complex shapes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to then use my union command, and I'm going to union this orange one that we just found here, the inner cylinder, and the text that I just created. So when I do that, and then I put both of them in here and subtract it from that main pink cylinder, I should then get something that looks a little bit like this. And get me out of the way. So this is pretty cool, I think. Here we have a way of kind of, I just moved myself. Here I've got a way of now showing code, and I've cut out my ring. So this is pretty cool. I think it's a fun way to kind of make these shapes. But what is the big problem here? If I were to try to 3D print this, where am I going to go horribly wrong? Well, the problem here is that in my model is that this O is not attached to anything. The center of the O might be a nice solid piece, but it's going to fall out if I try to 3D print it. The same is true here of my D. These are letters that have this area in the middle and the void, and this is just going to end up being like looking like a half circle and a circle, which on some cases it might look fine, but in others you may need to make a bar or something to it. Now there are other fonts that you could choose. I think there's ones like a Stencil Font that you could probably get away with if you looked around here. Maybe this one, the Stencil Font. Let's see if that works for me. And so that one might print. So there's a little bit of a space here. Remember, the thickness of all of this that we're looking at right now is pretty darn small. This is really, this whole thickness going across here is only 1 millimeter thick. So if you're using kind of standard resolution on your 3D printer, if it's an FDM, you know, the filament-based printers, chances are that's only going to be like 3 or 4 lines of filament thick, and so that's gonna maybe be easy to break out, but it depends. If you end up having it done on something like Shapeways or something like that, this might work out perfectly fine. So I'm going to keep it as the other code one that I started off with, the Roboto one, because my goal here is not to make one that is cut out. I want to make one that's actually a little bit embossed, but not sticking out so far. So let me go back here, and I'm going to take my my text out, and I'm going to take my cylinder out, and instead here I'm going to make it so that this text really kind of shoots out a little bit further, and then that'll be the thing that also gets subtracted from. So let me add my text to the cylinder. Ooh, it's looking very messy here. Let's see if we can't clean this up real quick. And once again, get me out of this spot. So what I'm looking to do is I want to be able to easily define what the ring is. I want to come in here and let me move over. I'm going to do another union with this. And in fact, I want to have, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put both the original ring and this into my initial piece. When I do that, if I want to say I want to take all of that and subtract it, let's render this one for just a moment. So what's happened here is now I've got my code, but it's really just sticking out from it. I added the two pieces together, and now I'm subtracting out the middle. I never want anything to be actually in the middle of the ring because that's going to be super uncomfortable or you won't be able to get your finger through. Now all I really want to do is really kind of chop off this outer edge. Now you could say, hey, Urban, why don't you go and just make it smaller, make it a size that maybe would work. Well, if you get down to smaller sizes, either it's not going to show, it's not going to stick out, or you're going to end up with a sharp edge. Let me try something like 12 for my number. So here you're starting to see the E and the C sticking out, and that's going to be a pretty mean little ring there. You're going to poke somebody with those, with that edge there, and I think that's maybe that'll be like a defensive ring or something that you could use. Codes never hurt so bad kind of ring. But instead, let's do this. My goal here now, I'll keep this number big enough so it pops out far, and I don't know, I'll make it 18, or let me make it something big again. I'll make it something like 30. That way, if somebody makes the size of the ring something really big, there's no chance that it's not going to fit in there. But essentially what I want to do here is I want to make it so that along this edge, I want to cut everything off and make it kind of follow that. So I want to really kind of make another ring that's going to subtract out from that. So to do that, I'm going to take another ring like the one we kind of had that had the center cut out and move it to the outside. So let's see if we can't build that right now. So I need to build all this kind of off the same numbers, off the same one as the inside ring diameter. So let's do that. And we're going to start with a 3D shape. We're going to make another cylinder. There's my cylinder. I'm going to use my variables here, and I'm going to pull in the math statement again. So I'm just making something that's going to be like another, I don't know, let's just make it one more. I think just one more will probably do it, right? One will be the inner diameter. This one will be one more. I think this is going to work good. So let's try it out. So if it's 2, that means everything's going to be embossed another millimeter, and that means that the whole ring's thickness, including the embossing, will be 2 millimeters, and I think that's going to be acceptable for what we want. If at any point you don't like how it is, or it's too embossed, you could always just limit this number. You could even make that a variable too. So let me duplicate this so I can put it in both places. Here's 1. There is 2. And let's see exactly where this one ends up. So it'll render that one because it's just loose here in our space. It's a little bit bigger than the one that was there previously. Let's make this be the 8 size. That's why I just changed it to 8. And I need to match it so it's also centered, so it's not just on the top and not on the bottom. This is a way of commenting. You see, every once in a while I hit this by accident. I could give information here, give info if I wanted to, and those comments show up. If you wanted to actually export this code into OpenSCAD, you could do that too, and you could click on the code button, and those comments actually show up there. And on occasion, I will do things in the BlocksCAD and then copy this code and move it to OpenSCAD, because there's ways to do other things within there. But they've really done a wonderful job with BlocksCAD. It just may not be as, depending on what side you're coming from, this may be more logical or less logical to use the blocks rather than this. The only thing I wish I could do is I wish I could code right here. I can't type anything right here. It doesn't actually let you type any code in here. You can import code into here though, but that's a different video. So let me save this. I haven't saved this in a while. It's always good to kind of save early and often. That way, when it crashes terribly, which could happen in any 3D program, you're safe. I'm already at the point where I wish I hadn't made this ring diameter one so big. Maybe I can rename that now. Can I rename that now? Well, let me rename variable. Let's rename variable. Ring die. Wait, I want it to be small. Ring size in mm. Is that shorter? A little shorter. Ring size in mm. All right, so it just does fit on the screen now a little bit better. All right, so let's quickly see that we can get rid of this outer piece here. And I want to make it so that this goes out even further and bigger, and I can chop it all off. So let me see. I want one more 3D shape here. You know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to right click on this one and duplicate it, because that'll give me a much easier way to kind of handle this. Except this time I'm going to make it be a really big number. Guess it doesn't need to be that big, but I made a really big number, really big cylinder. So now this one's probably like the most of the plane that you see here, which is way beyond what we need 3D printing wise, but it's going to work great as something that is going to cut away at our shape. So what I want to do here is I'm going to take that inner cylinder and subtract it from it. This is a wonderful little trick you can do right here, where you can right click on an entire block and tell it to disable this entire block. You can see now it's been grayed out, and when I look at it now as a grayed out item, I know that when I run it, this is not actually going to run. So I'm only seeing that. I'm not seeing the inner part of it at all. I need to do one more set operation here, where I'm going to do the difference between this one and this one. When I go ahead and run this one now, this one. When I run this one now, oh, I did it the wrong way around. I want to take the big ring and subtract the small ring, so that I'm left with a big ring with, that hole in there. Let me give this a color just so it kind of pops out a little bit more color. Hello, color. Let's make you a bluish color and run you. All right. So this crazy big sized one that I made, which I'm going to make smaller, is really meant to be a cutting tool. So I am not going to ever see this after I make this. So me picking a color is kind of ridiculous. So what I'm going to do now is take this and where are you? There you are. I'm going to take this and now re-enable this block. When I do that and run it, you should then see that ring show back up in the middle. And you can see here that this bigger outer ring now can be used as a Boolean operation. I can use that to cut away and make that be the thing that subtracts from that ring. So that is our kind of key trick here, where we've taken something that is already good, but now we're taking this other big, massive cutting tool. It doesn't have to be this big, but that way I know I'm not going to leave any extra text way over on the other side here, and it's going to work out just fine. So if I zoom in there really quick, you can see where I'm about to be, and I can now do my cut. So let's now take my inner cylinder and this other big outer cylinder, and I could label these, would probably make good sense. Inner cylinder, and that way if I ever was confused as to which one it is, I can put those two together. And I'm going to do a set operation where I unionize these two. Here you go. You and you are now married, and your offspring is going to be subtracted from the greater good. So the magic happens when I put that back into the difference, and voila, I now have a code ring. Now this is easily changed. I could change this to be all kinds of things, be really sappy or really fun, and now when I print this, it should actually work out quite well. When I do my final print for this, I will do one last thing. I will render this on high. There we go. And you can see it's much smoother. And you can easily zoom in too far and be like, oh, I still see polygons and things like that. But keep in mind, this is only 8 millimeters tall. You're going to see the lines from your 3D printer anyway. But you can notice here where that outer ring now has smoothly kind of cut it off going all the way around. We're going to keep this as a code because we're in a big coding month, and this is a fun coding project, coding/3D project. And there we go. So once I have this file, I can now easily go and generate my STL for it. Once I do that, I'll take it to my 3D printer and knock a couple out and give them away and have folks show them like this little bit of code that happened. So here I generated my STL, and then I can easily take that in my Finder and go crazy with it. So I hope you like this. If you did like this video, let me know. It's been one I've been thinking about doing for a while. It kind of incorporates coding, it kind of incorporates 3D printing, two things that I really love. And it's a fun, kind of easy, quick print too that you can experiment with, do different things with. You can change your depth pretty easily in size, and all you have to do if you want to change the entire size of your model now is to go up and change your ring size. So if I wanted to make one that was much smaller, and this is worth noting, if I make it much smaller and then I do another render, you may end up making it so that your code actually stretches around the edge of your ring. So you may run into some interesting things that happen. Here you can see my big head is in the way. Here you can see how it's wrapping around the side of the ring. I've had a few folks that say they really like that effect. And I mean, it is kind of cool, but it really is only, I'm not rotating the letters in this example around the center, which we could totally do. But in this particular example, I'm keeping it pretty simple, and we're keeping it all straight on. So usually somewhere between 11 and 12, most kids and high schoolers will end up finding it's a good fit. So let's see. Yeah, this one works out pretty well. I think I've done a couple at 10, and they tend to stretch just a little bit more around the edge. So anyway, try a couple, experiment. They're quick prints, and they use hardly any plastic. So and there's always going to be somebody's ring that it fits. So there'll be a little Cinderella kind of out there somewhere where it'll fit. And there we go. So I hope you like it. Like, subscribe, and click the bell and all that junk if you feel like it. If not, I hope you even made it this far. But thanks so much for watching this far. Bye-bye.